And I think that was the first time that I was like, oh, I am a person with a disability, I guess, because I'm getting a card that's specifically for disabled people. Maybe that includes me, but I would never, ever have openly identified as disabled. Like if someone had asked me to describe myself, I would not have described myself as disabled. I think the first time that it properly sunk in was when I was trying to get a job and I ended up getting a job, and then after disclosing that I would need accommodations, being told that I could no longer have that opportunity. And that's when I connected with the disabled community, started sharing my experiences, and realized that, oh yeah, I am with a capital D, disabled.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of What It's Really Like with me, your host, Molly Burke, which really just should be renamed at this point to Meet All My Cool Friends with Molly Burke, because that's just what this is. Yet again, we have another one of my cool friends, Miss Keely Cat-Wells, who, if you're in the disability advocacy space or disability and media representation space, you absolutely know this human because she is an icon. But for those who don't know Keely, who are you?
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me. Very honored to be here. So I am a disability rights advocate. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the founder of Making Space, which is a talent and learning platform connecting disabled professionals with employment and free education and helping companies become more accessible. And also the co-founder of Making Space Media, which is a media company increasing disability representation in media and film, TV. And I'll leave it there. I think that's a good overview.
You also have a melodic and adorable British accent.
Oh, thanks.
So tell me about your childhood. Tell me about your early life.
And I'm pleased that you do say that because I'm trying really hard to keep my British accent. I've been in America for 8 years and it's so hard to keep.
I've heard if you move after 12 years old, you mostly keep it.
Oh.
But if you move before that, then you lose it. I don't know how true that is. This is what I've heard.
That's good to know. So childhood, I grew up in West Sussex in the countryside of England, the middle of nowhere. Population of, I think, just over 1,000 people. So it was small, but I loved it. My parents had their own business. We lived on a farm. It was a farming business. And I just had the best childhood, like the best early childhood. I had so much freedom. Think of the movies where the kids are running around barefoot all over the farm playing with animals. That was me. It was amazing.
That sounds very idyllic.
It was great.
And you were also a dancer, weren't you? Was that dance was one of your big hobbies?
It was. So I didn't have the best time at school. So things kind of went downhill from the moment I entered school. So I was bullied really badly. I wasn't book smart. I was not good at anything academic.
That is shocking to hear as somebody who knows you, because I view you as being so smart, and every time I'm around you, I'm I'm stupid. Keely is so smart.
Oh my God. Well, I appreciate that. That means a lot. I feel like the British accent actually helps. No, I was terrible. I was diagnosed with dyslexia from a really young age. I think that played a big part. I don't think the school that I went to did a very good job at accommodating me, and the bullying was really bad. So my mom, amazing mom, she was determined to find a space where I could thrive. So she put me into dance class in a local studio, and I loved it. It was the first time that I could be around people my age and feel like I could be myself. It was just the best outlet. And I think both to try and take more time off school, and just because I loved it, I ended up getting a talent agent from the age of 9, and then booking film and TV shows. And in the West End, I was in Oliver for 3 years. So it meant very little time in school and lots of time doing what I loved, and just started working from a really young age.
Ugh, that was my dream as a child. I used to beg my parents to get me an acting agent, and they were like, when you're older, not right now. And I was like, please, 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 please. So I am jealous of that aspect of your childhood for sure. I'm curious to know more about your dyslexia because I think a lot of people know the word dyslexia and understand that it means that like words are jumbled. But can you explain a little more in practice, like on day to day back then or even now, how that affects you and what it presents like for you?
Yeah. And it's been really interesting, actually. Until I became physically disabled, I never thought or would have identified as a disabled person with dyslexia. Like that internalized ableism that I felt, and that like, there's just so much to unpack there. But for me, the way that dyslexia manifests is I'm terrible at spelling, I'm terrible at reading, I'm terrible at math. I also get very overwhelmed and basically anything academic intimidates me a lot. And that has been a lot to overcome with running multiple businesses and figuring things out as I go and figuring out what accommodations do actually help me. But I would say mainly it's been reading, writing, and math in general.
Anybody who follows Keely on LinkedIn and reads all of your posts is shocked by this because you certainly are such a good writer. What accommodations do you have today that help you be able to do that?
So I would say now with like Grammarly and AI and that helps enormously. Like back in school when we had to use an actual pen and a piece of paper and not use any technology, I failed every class. Like in England, we have GCSEs. I think the equivalent out in America is... Wait, I actually don't know the equivalent in America.
I also don't because I'm also not American. Can't help. America has something.
Yes.
Maybe the SATs?
Oh, yes. Maybe SATs. I think that sounds about right.
Listen to us just like pretending we know stuff. We're like, we live in America, but neither of us grew up. Neither of us went to school here. I've been here like 10 years. You've been here 8 years. And we're both like, there's something here like that.
There needs to be like a class for newbies to America.
Do you know how long it took me to get used to like freshman, sophomore, junior, senior? That has taken me, I maybe only just got that in the last year of my life. Like that was the most confusing thing for me.
Yeah. And college football?
Oh, I just don't even go there.
Yeah.
Thank God I found a fiance who does not like football. That really helps me. I was really like, that was one of my, on the list. I was like, not into football, ideally.
Important. Very important. So GCSEs, I remember even trying to figure out like what were the accommodations that I could have, and I spelt like everything wrong. And I actually remember a teacher saying to me, "You did such a great job, like creatively, this was spot on. Like the writing was great, but because you spelled the majority of things wrong, we have to fail you." And that's so sad. Like what an awful way to mark someone's like competence. I don't know. It was horrible. So now tech has helped enormously.
I think it's in those formative years, like the knock on self-esteem that must have had for you from that young age, which kind of meant you had to find that escapism in art and creativity. And it's so interesting to hear that you didn't identify as disabled. And I think probably a lot of people who are from our generation who grew up with learning disabilities did not identify as disabled because for so long society had such a black and white view of disability. Like it was so binary. It was like, you are deaf, blind, use a wheelchair, maybe on the fringes, autism, amputee, Down syndrome.
Yep.
And that was it. We did not think of majority of invisible disabilities as being disabled.
Yeah.
And we as a community have slowly been trying to push for that shift. And I think we are slowly getting there.
Yeah.
But we still, I as a blind woman still face it all the time where, when I get on public transit, I try to get the disability seating so that when I'm getting on and off, I'm close to the door because there's very brief windows to get on and off buses. And when you're blind, or trains, and when you're blind, you take slower. So like I want to have that quick exit.
Yeah.
It's also the easiest way for me to find a seat is the one that's going to be the closest to the entrance. And I struggle with balance because, blindness and hearing loss both deeply impact your ability to stay balanced. So it's really difficult for me to just stand and hold one of the bars. So I'm always looking for that disability seating. And the amount of times that I walk on and like people do not recognize that I would need that seating because it has a wheelchair symbol.
Yeah.
And that I have to be like, hello, anybody, is there a seat available? And I have to like verbally advocate for myself because I don't fit this one sticker symbol that was supposed to capture an entire community.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. So it makes sense to me why you didn't. But at the same time, I think it says like something much deeper about society.
Yeah.
I want to talk about finding that escapism in art. So you found dance. What kind of dance were you into? Were you one of the ones that just did it all, or did you have a favorite?
I loved ballet so much. I physically was definitely not born to be a dancer or to be a ballerina, but I loved it so much. I think I loved the discipline. I loved that you had to work so incredibly hard. I loved that it had kind of a framework and like it felt nice to be being taught something that other than like with school, when I was taught something, I would immediately fail. But with ballet, it's like I could work so hard and I could eventually get somewhere that was close to what they were looking for. And I didn't fail. Like I just loved it. But musical theater was where my heart was at. Like I loved the singing and the acting and the dance and all of it together.
That makes so much sense, this idea that at school, it didn't matter how hard you worked. It didn't matter actually even how good your work was creatively. If you couldn't get the spelling right, it was a fail. But with dance, you could work, and you'd get that payoff of being on stage and performing and booking the gig and things like that. Yeah. I think it's funny that you loved ballet because that was my least favorite kind of dance. But I feel like when I think of our friendship, and in ways we're also like co-workers in certain capacities, like we're often in the same work environments. And when I think about us, like our styles are so different in terms of like the way in which we go about our work. But I think that's what makes our friendship so fun and so interesting is we have different perspectives. We get to bounce off each other.
Yeah.
And it totally makes sense to me knowing you so well that ballet, like you loved that structure. And that was what I hated so much. I was like, it's not letting me have my freedom to express myself.
What was your like dance class of choice?
Well, of course, I loved tap because it was very audio. But I would say like the drama girl in me, I loved lyrical and contemporary, that very like artistic expression of the music.
This is so starting to make sense.
Right?
Yes.
Doesn't it? Like you are the embodiment of a ballet girl and I am the embodiment of a contemporary lyrical girl.
It's so true. Isn't it interesting? There are so many disabled people who used to be dancers or used to be in like the creative space. It fascinates me, who are also now entrepreneurs.
It's so true. And I do feel like when you have that creative background and then you have disability, your natural creative muscle that you're able to flex when it comes to living daily as a disabled person in a world that wasn't built for you, it's like comes so in handy.
Yeah.
The amount of times that I tap into creativity when there's a barrier in my way, because I can't attack that in an analytical way.
Yeah.
Like there's just no way I can necessarily in that moment change that.
Yeah.
So I have to come up with creative solutions and workarounds to figure out how I'm going to get through day to day when things aren't designed with me in mind.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense to me to be able to like tap into that creativity as a solution to disability.
Even the communication, like when I was going through misdiagnosis, I remember even having that skill to articulate things or like even the preparation that you're taught when you do musical theater or you do dance. You can't show up to a space and not be prepared. You have to be over prepared in every sense. And even that for me, like that lesson, then going into the doctors being fully over prepared, I think helped me enormously through my journey.
You mentioned misdiagnosis, so I want to kind of get into that part of your journey. So you grew up dance, acting, singing, being on stage. I had no idea you were on the West End.
Yes. Oh my God, it was the best 3 years of my life.
That's incredible. How old were you when you did that?
Oh, I was young. I think it was 10, no, maybe older. Maybe like 11 for 3 years, maybe around that age.
So you're kind of living your dream, getting to skip school, to be on stage, be a performer. Like truly every child who dreams of being an actor or a performer, that's the dream. You're like, let me at it. Like, I'm not waiting till I'm 18 to venture into this. Like, let me be a performer. We cannot be stopped. So you're doing this, you're thriving. And what was that pivot moment? When did things change?
So I knew that I wanted to go to college for dance. So I was auditioning pretty young. I would say I was 16 or 17. No, 16. And I was auditioning for like the top 3 dance academies in London. And I actually didn't get in to all 3. And I remember going to the one that I was so unbelievably passionate that I really wanted to go to. I remember being like, I'm not going to take no for an answer. And I got on the train from my tiny hometown in West Sussex all the way to London. And I went and I knocked on the headmistress's door. And I was like, can I please have one more shot? And she said, you can join the next audition the next day. So I came back up. I did the audition the next day. And I will never forget. It was actually a hard letter in the mail. It wasn't an email. It was a letter. I remember getting a letter to say they had changed the decision and that I actually got into this school. It like makes me emotional thinking about it.
Shut up. That is
the best.
Such an incredible story. And it makes so much sense knowing what a fighter you are today. And like the fact that you ended up in disability advocacy and have like truly made so much change in your 30 years. Like, well, not even 30 years that you've been in advocacy, like 8-10 years. Like it makes so much sense to know that that's the person you were, like that you always just had this feisty fight and we're like, no isn't an answer. And I completely resonate with that feeling and that mindset. It's also like truly entrepreneurial of you. That is the opening story in your memoir. That is so good.
Thank you.
I love that.
Thank you.
So you start at this college, and what's life like for you?
Oh my God, it was incredible. So I moved to London, which was such a big step, like moving from such a small town to London. It was very scary, but very exciting. So I moved into this flat. We call them flats in America. I think you call them apartments. Moved into a flat. And the first few weeks of training, it was very intense. Like we would have broken toes from point shoes. We would have bloodied knees from doing floor work. Like your muscles would be aching so much because you're pushing yourself beyond what you ever thought possible or ever thought your body could do. And like that was normal. So like that kind of pain, like that kind of, it was so normal and it was expected. But one day I woke up in a pain that was very unfamiliar. And I remember not being able to keep food down. And I thought it would pass. I thought it was fine. I would still go to college. I would push through. And then it got to a point where I collapsed in a class. So a friend took me to, we call it A&E in England, emergency room in America. They took me to the emergency room and the doctors did very minimal testing. And they were very quick to say, you're just underweight, you're anxious, you're stressed, you should just drink more water, eat a burger, and meditate.
The classic response to women having a health concern.
Literally. It's
Stop.
so sad.
This is not the first time we have heard this exact kind of narrative on this podcast, and I'm sure it won't be the last, which deeply frustrates me.
Yeah, it was horrendous.
How many days between that first morning waking up with this pain to going to hospital after collapsing?
It was a while. I was so used to dealing with pain and pushing through it that I was like, I'll be fine. I'll be absolutely fine. So I think it was a while. I think it was probably even like a couple of weeks.
So you get this eat a burger and chill out? Do you go home and eat said burger and meditate? What do you do with that?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I put all of my trust in doctors. Like, I believed that the systems that are there that are supposed to support you at your worst, they in fact work. That was my belief. Oh boy, was I wrong. I went back. I was continuously getting worse and worse. I was so sick. I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't keep food down at all. It was horrendous, and I was in so much pain. The most intense pain I think I have ever felt. And it got to a point where I would have a very small window in the morning where I could get up and I could do things. So I remember speaking to the headmistress and some teachers at the college at the time, and I said, look, I can participate in school probably between the hours of like 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. Can we fit as much as we possibly can into that? And they were very accommodating. They were incredible. So I would go to school between like 8 and 11, and then I would just go home and I would not be able to get out of bed. And then it took a while again to go to the doctors again. But when I did, I kind of got similar response. And that happened for a while until it just got so bad that I had to be hospitalized because I got so thin. I was unrecognizable. I became like half of who I was, literally. And then, I was hospitalized and then essentially hospitalized for the next 4 years.
So at 17 years old, you think you're living your dream, right? You move out to this flat in downtown London. You're dancing every day. It's everything you've ever wanted. You spent your childhood on the West End building your career for this moment. And all of a sudden, you're going to spend the next 4 years of your life in hospital. But of course, you don't know that when you walk into the hospital that day. What was that like when you went into the hospital and realized you were being admitted?
I assumed that I would just be given a pill and I would be fine the next day, or they would do testing, they would immediately figure it out, and then I would just go back to what I was doing. I would catch up on missed classes, and I'd go from there. And then after every single test, when they continuously came back with no answers, it made me worry a lot.
I have to ask because I know this is also an all too common story, especially for women in the healthcare space when dealing with conditions that cause weight loss or the inability to eat, that they get accused of having an eating disorder. Is that something that you faced through that diagnosis phase as they're continually not getting results? Was there a moment when they said to you, you just have an eating disorder?
Oh, absolutely. They actually tried to admit me to an eating disorder specific hospital. They thought it was attention. They thought I was purposely making myself unwell. They diagnosed me with anorexia, bulimia, and other mental health conditions as well. And it was, oh, God bless my mom. She is the only reason I think I'm here today. She fought for me. She was the only one that believed me. And there was also other family members that thought that I was also doing it for attention, making it up, doing it because I was trying to make it in dance and ballet and wanted to look a certain way. And yeah, my mom knew that was not the case.
Again, a story we hear a lot on this podcast, the mama bears
They're the best.
fight for us disabled or chronically ill children. And truly, so many of us are only who we are today because of our mamas. So shout out to all the moms of disabled kids. It's not easy, but your child will grow up to be our age and still praising their mama.
Yep.
So,
oh, my mom. I have so many stories about my mom. One night in hospital, she would sneak in, like, obviously you're not allowed alcohol in the hospital, but she really needed a drink. And she would sneak in bottles of wine in plastic bags because she was sleeping on the floor next to my bed.
that 100% sounds like something Neve Burke would do.
They're the best. They need to have drinks.
I love that. That's so funny. So you enter the hospital. They're doing all of these tests. What kind of tests did they run? I'm guessing you went through the whole gambit.
Everything under the sun and more. I felt like a guinea pig, truly. I went through so many experimental tests too, and looking back at it, there are things that I think I went through that I'm not quite ready to talk about, but I think things that shouldn't have been done. There was a lot of medical abuse, and it was very traumatic. Yeah.
I remember being in an Uber ride many years ago here in LA, and I was chatting with the driver. It was a female, and she had a daughter who had cancer at 11 years old. And she was talking to me about my disability and my past growing up, going to the hospital as a child, seeking a diagnosis. I went through many tests, and unfortunately, still at 32, many of my most formative childhood memories are at the hospital, being in pain and having tests. And
Yeah.
I remember she said to me, I wish they would just be honest with my daughter and would tell her when it was going to hurt. Because they keep saying to her, it's going to be fine. It'll just be quick. It'll just a little pinch. And then she's in terrible pain. And so she's learning at this young age to not trust doctors because they lie to her.
Yeah.
And she said, I wish they would just tell her it's going to hurt, but you will be okay.
Yeah.
Because at least then she would be mentally prepared and she would trust that you're going to tell her the truth. And I was like, I feel that so deeply.
Yeah.
And as somebody who also has a lot of medical trauma that I hold to this day, and that I've had to unravel in my adulthood and try to come up with like coping strategies, it's again like an all too familiar story for those of us with rare conditions and who have grown up in medical settings. It's this frustrating thing. What would you say to doctors and nurses? Like if you could give one message to doctors and nurses after what you went through, what would it be?
Believe people's pain. Oh, the disbelief. The disbelief, the judging, the reliance on the computer, the reliance on how things have been done, the reliance on what they've previously been seen. Like they're obviously, there's a saying within the chronic illness community, they're taught to see horses, not zebras. But it seems like they never want to see the zebra. Like no one does. But I feel like that makes them less likely to believe you. And yeah, that I just believe women.
So you're going through all of these tests. You're not being believed. They're trying to transfer you to inpatient for eating disorders. At what point was there finally this unlock where they believed you and they figured out that there was actually something happening in your body?
Honestly, I don't think there ever was an unlock. I remember going to see a surgeon at some point and getting an MRI, one of those horrible MRIs where, or one of the, what is it, an X-ray where you have to drink that
The barium swallow?
Oh my God, yes.
That is literally one of the worst things.
So gross.
Absolutely ever. Did they make you do, I had to do this when they make you swallow the crystals that create gas bubbles in your stomach, but after you've already drank that like full cup of that chalky pink stuff, and then they make you swallow the crystals, but then hold the gas. So you have to burp, and they're like, don't, you have to swallow. And I couldn't, and it just erupted from me, and this is graphic. All the liquid came up with. It was so freaking and they're tilting you. Was it that?
Honestly, I don't know. That sounds like a very...
The barium swallow is horrible.
Oh, I never had to do the crystal thing, which I'm surprised about, actually. It sounds like something I should have probably done. But it was just like the milkshakey, horrible, like the jug full of the white. I had to do that so many times. So many freaking times. I remember at one point my camera roll was basically just many, many jugs of the white, horrible liquid. Oh, it was so gross.
Disgusting.
So gross. And I remember taking that, and I think after that, they said that they would do a surgery and see if they would fix something. And honestly, it's all a little bit of a blur. I don't even know how many surgeries I've had at this point, but I remember one surgery essentially went wrong. And that was then, weirdly, the pathway to then me getting better. Because I honestly don't quite know, but I just remember, like, they inserted some mesh of some kind. I had an allergic reaction. And then it was only then that they then started looking in the right direction. So that the thing had to go wrong for me to get on the right path.
God, that's such a metaphor for life. Like, sometimes the biggest curse actually turns into our biggest blessing and, like, is actually the thing that's diverting us to the right path we're meant to be on.
It was so true. That's so well said. I've never looked at it like that.
No, truly, I feel like the amount of times that's been the case in my life when I, like, am ripping my hair out, I'm like, why on earth is this happening? And you just have to, like, surrender and trust and believe that the universe has some weird, wacky plan that we're not aware of.
Yeah.
And then, like, you wake up later and you're, like, looking back and you're like, oh, that's why that thing happened. That was
Yeah.
so terrible.
Yeah.
Is it was, like, pushing me to walk this path I never would have chosen without that terrible situation directing me this way.
Yeah. That's so true.
And I totally relate to being like, I don't even know, so much of it is a blur. I feel like there's, like, periods in my life where I'm like, it's like a vague dream-like memory.
Yeah.
Or it's like bits and pieces and your brain does this weird thing to protect yourself where it's like, we don't need to remember that.
Yeah.
We're just gonna, like, get rid of that thing over here.
And I think you also have PTSD, right?
Yes.
Like, medical PTSD is, it's a trip.
Well, it's a trip because you have to deal with medical for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Like, I have complex PTSD that has come from multiple different things in my life. I have PTSD related to medical. I have PTSD related to bullying. And it's the thing with medical is, like, it's unavoidable. And actually, the more you avoid it, likely the more it'll actually just come up later in your life because you avoided the things you should have been dealing with.
Yeah.
And then you go to the doctor because you're forced to because you're like, I can't avoid it anymore. And then boom, the onslaught of things.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to navigate how to not let that manifest.
Yeah. Still learning.
It's a lifelong journey, especially after what you went through, which was even more significant than what I faced. So you get this mesh put in. You have an allergic reaction, which sounds like the worst thing that could happen, to have an allergic reaction to something physically inside your body. That sounds terrifying, but it creates this unlock, whatever it is for the doctors, where they're like, okay, we have this new path we want to explore.
Yeah.
Take me through what it eventually looked like until you were able to finally get the treatment and exit the hospital and start your life.
So it ended up with them saying, we will need to give you an ileostomy, which, for those that don't know, is essentially where your intestine is diverted. So you can have a colostomy or an ileostomy. Colostomy is where you still have your large colon, and an ileostomy is where your large colon is completely diverted. They either take it out or it's just diverted. And then a piece of your intestine essentially connects to a prosthetic bag on your stomach. So they told me that I was going to need that. And as a dancer, I had always equated worth with appearance. I had always been looking in the mirror and, like, it's dance. You wear leotards and crop tops, and it's about the form of your body, the way that it shapes, the way that it moves. And to me, that was the end of the world. Like, having something that was going to drastically change my appearance, it was terrifying, but it was going to save my life. I was at that point quite literally dying, so I had no other choice. But I do remember being terrified, and actually to the piece of what you were mentioning around doctors saying, wanting them to say that just be honest. I remember a doctor telling me, it doesn't have to be permanent. It won't be permanent. And that was a straight up lie. It had to be permanent. There was no other option.
When they told you that this was the solution, and you're having all these realizations that your dream career, this incredibly competitive industry, where they're looking at every little detail, and you know that this is an industry where your body has to look a certain way, and you're wearing tight outfits or revealing outfits, and you're realizing that this path that will save your life will also end your dream. How did that feel?
I know that you'll relate to this. I immediately remember turning to film and TV, turning on the television, trying to find any kind of representation out there, anything. And I remember finding one of those medical shows, and it was where someone was going to be getting this surgery. And I remember being, oh my gosh, like I found someone that I could, a character that I could potentially relate to and maybe like get some tips from, or like this. And I remember in the show, they actually ended, they unfortunately, the character decided to end their life instead of having the surgery. That was the first piece of representation that I had ever seen from someone with a similar lived experience.
Was that death is better than the end result of having an ileostomy.
Yeah.
That breaks my heart. I want to tell you the first time I learned about ileostomies. I was a little girl, and I don't know if it was like a weird way of coping with my own medical stuff, but I would watch a lot of medical shows. I was really interested in medical stuff. Maybe it was because in a way I saw myself in those. I'm not sure, but my aunt had been a nurse, and I would always ask her to tell me stories from her time as a nurse. And I'll never forget, she told me this story, and it stuck with me. It still sticks with me to this day. I was probably 8 years old when she told me this. She told me about this 12-year-old boy who was coming in to get an ileostomy surgery. And she felt really devastated for him because she was like, this is life-changing, and like a 12-year-old boy shouldn't have to go through this, and kind of all of these misconceptions and stereotypes and stigma about an ileostomy and what it meant for somebody's life. And keep in mind, this is probably back in like the 70s when the surgery is happening. And she said to him, how are you feeling going into surgery? And he said, I'm so excited.
Oh.
And she said, really? And he said, yeah, because I'm going to get my life back.
Yeah.
He said, I've spent years sitting on a toilet.
Yeah.
And I don't get to play with my friends, and I don't get to play sports, and I don't get to go outside, and I don't get to live. And this is going to let me live. And it totally changed her perspective. And I love that that was my first, the first time I ever heard of this, because in my mind, like ever since, whenever I meet somebody or hear stories about somebody getting an ostomy bag or an ileostomy, like that's the way I view it, is like this is a gift that gives somebody their life back. And it makes me sad that for somebody like you who had to go through this, the first thing you saw was somebody wanting to end their life because dying was better than living with this. And I think it's so common for those of us with disabilities to hear that rhetoric. Like I have seen over the years of sharing my story publicly, so many times in my comment section, I would rather die than be blind. I would kill myself if I was diagnosed with your disease. And it's such a hard thing when you're living with something that the world deems worse than death. It's like, how are you supposed to feel good and be confident and be productive and move forward and heal when the world is looking at you saying, I'd want to die? It's really hard. So I'm sorry that like that is the first thing that you saw, because I know how that feels still to this day when I see that as a healed, whole, happy person. Still, when I see those kind of comments, it's like this pang where you're like, God, how can we stop the world from seeing us like this? And that's obviously the work you and I try to do. But there's a long journey to get from seeing that representation to being the Keely you are today. So you go in for the surgery and you come out. Did they tell you when you came out, like, what they found in there? Like, was there clarity that coming out of that as to what a diagnosis could be, or did it remain just this mystery for you?
It was still very much a mystery. I actually got the surgery around Christmas, and I was on the surgical emergency ward for a very, very long time at that point, and I was deemed an emergency, but obviously not an emergency that was to be put before like car crashes and so it was a ward that was hectic. Like in the UK, it's NHS. Like doctors are so busy and so overworked and have so many cases. So there was also never time really with my surgeon, with my team, with a doctor. There was never really enough time. So I remember I don't think I had too much of a conversation with them after, but I do remember a few maybe weeks or months after having a conversation with a surgeon or a doctor around Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and that being the likely culprit. And it definitely answers a lot of questions for me.
How long until you were able to leave the hospital following that surgery?
So I did go home, I would say probably just after Christmas, but in typical Keely style, it of course didn't fully work, and I had to go back for another surgery, probably like a month or so later. Just more complications, and then I think I was still back and forth in the hospital for another couple of years after that. Like just so many complications from prior surgeries, from that surgery, from the state that doctors had allowed me to get in. Like I was just so sick. So it was an uphill battle for still many, many years after that.
What was it like learning to get used to having an ileostomy?
Do you know what? It's surprising that was probably the easiest part of the journey. And I remember doctors saying, like, it's going to be so hard, and you get given a stoma nurse, and they kind of make it seem maybe more complicated than it needs to be. I don't know, maybe just because I'd been through so much at that point that similar to that young boy, like, I was so happy to have kind of a solution. Um, but it was complicated finding, like, the right supplies and figuring out how I'm going to, for the rest of my life, have to continuously keep ordering these supplies and managing them. And, like, you're allergic to some and some don't work. And, like, that was a learning curve. And then I remember, like, the first time that I wanted to get on the underground after surgery and being terrified, like, there's no bathrooms in the underground. Like, what am I going to do? Or getting on a plane for the first time. Like, oh my God, is it going to blow up? Is it going to be an issue? Like, can I swim? Like, all of these unanswered questions. And I did turn to social media, and I found so much hope and so much solace in the amount of people in the like Spoonie community and the Ostomate community, like posting and sharing their experiences, and that really, really helped, like getting used to it. And now, as long as there's not wild complications, it's kind of like cleaning my teeth. It's like a quick, easy routine that I now have down.
I love that you turned to social media and that it was a source of hope for you, but I equally hate that that's where so many of us have to go. Like, that it is so hard to find an in real life community, that it is impossible to find good representation in mainstream media, and that we have all had to be resourceful and take it upon ourselves to build these spaces for ourselves. It's like extremely frustrating, but I am really happy that it was there for you when you needed it, because it is, for an industry that gets such a bad rap, like social media gets such a bad press. I think it's the beautiful part of it is that people like you and me can find community who understands.
Yeah. I remember I was on a ward in a London hospital, and I was on social media. I had a little account, and it was called My Fight, and it was all about my journey with misdiagnosis and getting the surgery and other surgeries and etc. And I posted the view from from the ward that I was on, and a girl called Megan commented on it, and she was like, "I think we're in the same hospital, and I'm on XYZ ward." And she was like, "Can we meet up?"
Aw.
And we both like escaped our wards, and we met up, and we became best friends. She ended up having ileostomy surgery as well. I know. It was
Oh.
really special, and I remember actually we did things together that we were terrified of. We actually went on the underground together. We got meals together. Like, we just became the best friends. Like, we're still really, really, really close friends. So that was really special. That happened all because of social media.
That makes my heart just so happy for you. That is the sweetest story, and I'm so glad you had that person, because truly, just having one person in your life who gets it
Yeah.
makes all the difference. I remember in high school, after having lost majority of my vision, once a month, I would go to a weekend. I'd go on a Friday night, come home on a Sunday afternoon, and it was a weekend for blind teens. And every month there was a different theme. So it'd be like leadership, self-care, careers, college. And I would get there and it would be like, I would just sigh. Like, it was like relief that I was in this space
Yeah.
where everybody understood my lived experience.
Yeah.
And it's so weird when I think, even to this day, I think sometimes like, oh, wait, most people aren't living the life I live. Like, most people around me aren't living my reality. And it's just so important to have community
Yeah.
and to have friends who, even if it's not the same diagnosis or the same disability, who understand the lived experience of disability, of medical trauma.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like when you have that person you can share those experiences with, it's like a breath of fresh air.
And they teach you to advocate for yourself too. Like, the amount of friends who have said, no, that isn't right. Like, that shouldn't be happening. Or even, and you know this with hidden disability, when it's not always immediately apparent that you have a disability, like, the way that you have to advocate for yourself, it's
Even more.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I've found that so much in community.
Absolutely. I learn more from people with lived experience than I do from the people who are supposed to be the ones who teach us.
Yeah.
So you go home, you have this ileostomy bag, and you say that that's really the easiest part to get used to. What was the hardest part to get used to?
Completely rebuilding my life. I could no longer have the career that I wanted to. My entire life, from the age of like 8, everyone thought that I was going to have a career in musical theater and dance. Like, it was set. That was it. That had been the only thing that I'd ever even gone to school for. I didn't even have not one qualification. I was fucked. Pardon my French. Like, I was so screwed.
I never, ever hear Keely drop an F-bomb. That's a rare one.
That's so
Miss
funny.
Proper British
Oh.
Ballet.
I try. Sorry. Yeah, it was scary. I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. And I remember trying to get internships in like adjacent careers. Like, I explored the idea of being a talent agent. I remember when I was actually in hospital, some of my friends were trying to get part-time work, and they were trying to get work as dancers, like, while they were still in college. And I would try and help them get jobs. And it wasn't until way after I came out of hospital that I realized that, oh, that's actually what a talent agent does. So I remember trying to find internships to be a talent agent. And I remember I did get one internship to be a children's talent agent assistant or internship at one point, and it was fine, but I was still in and out of hospital a lot, and they wouldn't let me work from home or hospital. So eventually I had to leave.
Pre-COVID, when we didn't think it was possible to work from home because only disabled people needed to do it. But suddenly when everybody needed to do it, voila.
Yes.
It is possible.
Exactly. Yeah. To them, it was absolutely no bueno, like not gonna happen. So I kind of just went out on my own and started helping some people get jobs and started charging commission from it. And that was essentially the start of my new career.
What was it like rebuilding your body back? I'm sure over those 4 years in hospital, being malnourished and struggling to eat, like the muscle loss, the weight loss, somebody who used to rely on her body for strength, right? Like being a dancer, you're pure muscle. And all of a sudden, you've spent years laying in a bed in pain, unable to stay hydrated and give yourself adequate nutrition. What was that part of your life like, trying to rebuild?
Oh my gosh, it was really hard. And I still actually struggle a lot with balance and with figuring this out. I actually became quite obsessed with fitness. Anytime I was feeling good, because I'd been so used to being in pain and feeling unwell and recovering from surgery, that any moment, any few hours that I felt good, I would do as much as I possibly could and fit everything possible into those few hours. So I became quite obsessed with fitness. Like, I wanted to be the best version of me that I possibly could. And I was so grateful to have a body that was semi-malfunctioning, at least not dying, that I went a little bit overboard, I would say.
Well, and you spent your whole life with fitness via dance being something you did for hours on end every day. So you were so like mentally trained to think that that is the normal way to do fitness. Like kill your body, wake up in pain with broken toes and do it again.
Yeah.
That's very difficult hardwired programming from such a young age to unwrap.
Yeah. And I think I was also re-exploring what my body was now capable of. I didn't know its limits, so I think I was constantly trying to push it to its limit so I knew what that was. Because I didn't know what that was anymore. And I have so many residual issues from surgeries. Like, I have a lot of pelvic issues, lower back issues, like still so many issues from that mesh. Like, it's a mess. So there was a lot of exploratory. It was like being born again. It was completely reinventing myself, both from the career standpoint, from even personality standpoint, because like you lose friends. You lose everyone going through that shit. Pardon my French again. Wow. I'm getting way too comfortable.
Wow. Somebody's getting sassy. No, I love it. It's so funny. I was always like, for so long in my career, because I swear like a sailor in real life, as you know. But on social, I'm always like, And then whenever I would go on other people's podcasts, that would be the one time I'd let myself swear. Because I was like, well, it's not on my platform.
Yeah,
so I can like,
fine, right?
I can swear on other people's platforms. I get it. And now doing podcasts, like, I swear from time to time. I can't. Like, when I'm just sitting with my friends, like, shooting the shit for 2 hours, it's gonna come out. It just is. So what? We're human. It doesn't take away from the work that we do. And all the good. And sometimes a tasteful F-bomb only strengthens the argument. That's what I believe.
Agreed. Totally agree.
I want to talk about when you made that pivot to realizing and identifying yourself as being disabled, because you talked about growing up with dyslexia, you did not view yourself as being disabled. And I'm sure it wasn't like, oh, I have an ileostomy bag now. Oh, I have a chronic illness. I'm disabled. Like, I'm sure it's not like a flip that switches. At what point did you begin to make that identification for yourself?
Isn't it wild that doctors don't tell you, like, welcome, congratulations?
You don't get a card. There's no, like, here is your member ID.
No, exactly. I do remember...
Elton John, this is not about you. He said, do you want Huggies? That's a good one. I could give you Huggies.
You need it. You need it. I do. Hi, friend.
Always trying to make everything about him.
Oh, I mean, rightly so. I remember I would really struggle with standing on the bus. So I think it was a bus driver that told me, like, oh, you could probably get, because I still looked very, very unwell. And I think a bus driver told me about, like, the universal, like, disabled card that you can get in England. So you can travel at no cost, and then it helps you, like, know that you can use those seats that are designated for disabled people.
They have something like that in Japan, too. And I wish North America implemented something like that.
Yeah, they should do that in LA. With this new metro system, too, that they're building for the games.
Mm-hmm.
They should do that. We should do that. We should get them to do that.
We'll band together.
To be continued. So I remember having to go to this, like, very medicalized, like, screening to get that card. And I think that was the first time that I was like, oh, I am a person with a disability, I guess, because I'm getting a card that's specifically for disabled people. Maybe that includes me, but I would never, ever have openly identified as disabled. Like, if someone had asked me to describe myself, I would not have described myself as disabled. I think the first time that it properly sunk in was when I was trying to get a job, and I ended up getting a job, and then after disclosing that I would need accommodations, being told that I could no longer have that opportunity. And that's when I connected with the disabled community, started sharing my experiences, and realized that, oh yeah, I am, with a capital D, disabled.
Would you have identified as chronically ill before you identified as disabled?
Absolutely. On my little social media page, on the, like, My Fight social media page, I called myself chronically ill. Absolutely. Isn't that... And I did not connect the dots. I did not think, like, oh yeah, being a chronically ill person means that you're also disabled.
What's interesting is being chronically ill can be disabling, but not every disability is a chronic illness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my blindness is not a chronic illness. It's just my state of being. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And I feel like sometimes people get the wording confused.
Yeah.
Because we often do disabled and chronically ill. Like, we lump them together.
Yeah.
Or people with chronic illness will say that they're disabled, which they are. And so it, like, gets confusing for people. Do you feel like my delineation makes sense to you?
Yes. No, it absolutely does. And it's interesting because I feel like a lot of non-disabled people, they think, or they have this stigma or stereotype that every disabled person is sick.
Yes, exactly.
Like, no, that's not true.
I also think it's interesting when we think of the spectrum of disability. Over the years of sharing my life as a disabled woman online, I'll get people messaging me and be like, hey, like, here's my diagnosis. This was my life's like, am I disabled?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not the disability police.
Yep.
Like, my answer is always like, if you feel disabled by your diagnosis, then you're allowed to call yourself disabled.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gatekeeping. I'm not here being like, everybody join us. Like, look, if you don't gotta join us, really, you shouldn't. It's not that fun. We make it look fun. It ain't that fun. But we are a community that's here and welcoming. Like,
Yeah.
we're not like, I think it's important to understand where you fall on the spectrum, because it's important as allies within this community together that we can acknowledge that somebody's lived experience has more barriers than somebody else's.
Yeah.
And you need to use your privilege to be a part of helping uplift those with less.
Yeah.
Right? So
Absolutely.
I do believe it's important to understand it's a spectrum and we're all on different places of that spectrum.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make somebody's lived experience of disability less significant or less valid because they're on the lighter end of that spectrum of barriers and access.
Yeah, absolutely. We at Making Space, we do a lot of work with corporations, and we will do trainings, we'll work quite closely with them, and we always do a survey at the beginning and a survey at the end, and one of the questions is, do you identify as disabled? And it's so interesting. On average, we see a 2x increase. Like, it will double the amount of people who have said no at the beginning. It then goes to, like, more than half will then say that they are at the end. Because it's, once you understand that what it means and what that spectrum is. And there's so many people who have so much internalized ableism and they think that they are quote unquote not disabled enough.
Yes, exactly.
There's no such thing.
Yes, there's no such thing. And, if you don't want to identify as disabled because you genuinely don't feel disabled by something, that's fine.
Yeah.
I follow a content creator who's missing multiple fingers. I want to say they have 6 fingers total between 2 hands. And they're like, I'm not disabled. Like, I do not feel disabled by that. Equally, somebody could have that exact same situation and feel disabled by it.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
Equally, I know somebody with diabetes who has type 1 diabetes and they're like, I'm not disabled by it. Like, this is not a disability. They're entitled to feel that way if they feel like they have it very well controlled and it does not impact much of their day-to-day life. They're entitled to say, I don't feel disabled and I don't feel comfortable identifying that way. But that does not mean that somebody else who is type 1 diabetic cannot identify as disabled, right? So it is that weird thing where because it's self-selective, like we don't just get given a card from the government that says like we view you as disabled now.
Yeah.
It is this weird thing where it can be difficult for people who are new to their lived experience, or for you're not disabled, Elton. Yes, you can leave this conversation. You're not disabled. You don't get to be a part of it.
Oh my goodness.
He says, I identify as a mobility aid.
Yes.
So I am adjacent to disability.
And I'm very good at it.
I have a very big understanding of the lived experience of a disabled person because I help them.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you're a good boy. Okay, let's speak about mobility aids. Let's get into that because, this self-identifying as disabled stuff can be really tricky when you're new to being disabled. You're struggling with internalized ableism. At what point did you start realizing you would benefit from mobility aid? And be honest, how hard was it to actually start using it?
Oh, that's such a good question. This is a big question. So I remember growing up, my granddad, who was my best friend in the entire world, the most amazing man ever. He lived to the age of 98. And my family, who I also adore, very close to them all, I remember them often praising my granddad and saying, wow, it's incredible that he is 98 years old and doesn't use a mobility aid. He would have absolutely benefited from a mobility aid. But that framing in my mind that, oh, okay, mobility aid means weak. It means bad, and it is good if you don't need one. That's what I had in my brain.
Yep.
So I've always struggled with knowing my own energy levels, like not overdoing it, like having a chronic illness. That measurement, you're always measuring and calculating. Like, if I do this, will that mean I'm sick tomorrow? If I do this, will this mean I have a flare? Like, it's constant. And I'm also always juggling chronic pain. Like, it's amazing that so many people are like, so when are you in pain? And I'm like, no, I'm always in pain. And to them, they don't get that. Like, that's such a foreign concept to them. Anyway, tangent. And I remember one day I was with a friend who used a cane, and I've seen her without a cane. And I didn't know at that time too much about like ambulatory wheelchair users, ambulatory mobility aid users. And I was asking her like how it benefits her, why she uses it. And I was like, that is essentially my experience. And she was like, you should just try it for like a day. And I was like, oh, no. Like, I am not disabled enough to need a mobility aid. Like, I'm fine. I had so much internalized ableism. She eventually persuaded me to try it. And I tried it for a couple of days and I had so much less pain. I felt so much benefit. It was shocking. Like, I had no clue it was going to support me that much. No idea. And going back to, you can be more or less disabled depending on the environment that you're in.
The day, how much sleep you've had, how stressed you are, how busy you've been.
Yep, absolutely. And I was thinking about all the times when, like, I'm at conferences a lot. I am having to unfortunately be in spaces where they still are not great at accommodating people that can't walk very far, which for me, like standing and walking is really, really painful. It's not good for me at all. So yeah, it was then that I reluctantly started using a cane. And I found this amazing cane on Neo Walk Sticks that is glittery and sparkly. But I'd definitely be lying if I said I'm 100% comfortable, especially going into spaces where sometimes I don't need it and I'm with the same people who have seen me previously use it. And the judging, the fear that they're then going to think, oh, she's faking. And oh, she's faking then takes me right back to when I was 17 and not being believed by the medical system.
And then you're like, should I just bring it all the time, even if I don't need it, so that people believe me? That is a huge issue in the blind community, particularly with conditions like mine where it's progressive vision loss.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I've been fully night blind from birth. I have never been able to see in dim, dark lighting.
Yeah.
So as a child, I would have to use the cane at night and not during the day. And it's like, that's a common thing for people with my condition, even as they grow older, if they maintain their vision longer than me, which most do. They'll have to use their cane in certain settings and not in others. And they feel so much guilt and shame and embarrassment and fear around the judgment of society. Or I hear people, who use a cane, but can use Zoom on their phone, and when they hold it really close to their face, they can see it. But now they're like, well, I feel like I can't look at my phone in public because I also have my cane and people are going to judge me and think I'm faking it and accuse me of faking it. And I don't know where society gets off thinking that they are the disability police.
Yep.
And that in any way, somebody faking a disability at the grocery store impacts them.
Yep.
It does not.
Yep.
It doesn't impact you.
Yep.
So I don't know why you feel the need to be questioning the validity of that person's disability.
Yeah.
But I also really resonate with that first part of what you were saying around like people praising your grandfather for not using something he actually would have benefited from. I was literally having this conversation like a day or two ago with my fiance about how hard it is to have been praised my entire life for not looking blind.
Yeah.
Because what that inherently means is when you look blind, that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so now any moments where I know that I'm doing something that makes me, quote, look blind, I feel guilt and shame and embarrassment.
Yeah.
And then I hate myself for feeling that because I love the blind community and I love all of my friends who, quote, look blind, and I don't judge them and I don't think badly of them for that.
Yeah.
And I know it's a thing that is entirely out of their control, is out of my control, and it frustrates me that while society has said this because they think they're being kind, it's actually instilled more internalized ableism in me and more guilt and shame around something that is not in my control.
And isn't it wild how different society treats you? And I feel like it's kind of a rare experience to have those moments where sometimes you do look disabled, sometimes you don't look disabled, even though disabled doesn't have a look. There is no such thing as looking disabled.
Right. But looking disabled to society's stereotypes.
Yes.
Exactly.
And isn't it wild how different they treat you? Like, I have been physically abused, verbally and physically abused for using the disabled restroom when I've desperately needed it as someone with an ileostomy, but haven't had my mobility aid with me, so I didn't quote unquote look disabled. And then if I do have my mobility aid, no questions asked. But it baffles my mind.
And we are both people who can pass as non-disabled.
Yeah.
Right? Like if we're on a Zoom meeting, you wouldn't know that either of us are disabled.
Yeah.
If you're hopping into this video and have no context, you would look at both of us right now and you would not clock disability.
Yeah.
And it's weird for me too because I've been a guide dog user for 19 years this July. And way back when, 19 years ago, service dogs for other uses existed, but were not nearly what they are today.
Yeah.
And so it was the default to assume that when a dog was in a harness, it was a guide dog.
Yeah.
it's not that anymore.
Mm.
And so now, majority of the time, people do not in any capacity associate my service dog with me being disabled.
Yeah.
Even when I was younger, honestly, oftentimes they thought I was training it. I'm like, I'm 15 and I look 12. So I don't know who you think I'm training this dog for. But it's weird for me now when I go out with my cane, the way people treat me is so radically different in both good and bad ways. I will say what I love when I go out with my cane is that I get the help I need without having to beg for it.
Yeah.
Without having to prove that I need it.
Yeah.
Without having to advocate for myself. It's like people just know.
Yeah.
And the way that takes this weight off of me is so huge.
Yeah.
But it's not my preferred mobility aid because it just doesn't do for me what my dog does for me.
Yeah.
I can't ask my cane to find me the stairs. I can't ask my cane to find me a chair. So it's like I'm picking between what can make things socially easier in certain ways, but navigation more difficult. And then equally, the flip side of that coin is sometimes people treat me worse when I have a cane because that's when they definitely know I'm disabled and blind, and all of a sudden they'll treat me like I'm less than,
Yes.
or like I'm stupid, or like I'm unaware, or like I need other people to do everything for me and I can't be independent in a way that they don't when I have my dog.
Yep.
So it's like this weird catch-22 where there's benefits of people understanding I'm disabled right off the bat, but there's also negatives or like cons to it.
Yeah. I've really found that in professional spaces. Especially when like raising funding, if I don't have my mobility aid, the first question is, oh, like, this is so sweet what you're doing. Like, why are you doing this? Like, who do you know? Who in your family?
Like charity work that you're helping disabled people.
Yes. And I'm like, oh no, I'm disabled. It's because of my lived experience. And they're like, huh? And then it's but you don't look disabled. Oh, here we go.
Love to hear it.
Yeah. I'm sure so many of these themes have come up so many times. Like, the don't look disabled thing.
And again, it is such a catch-22 because I recognize there is privilege in passing as non-disabled.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, I do actively benefit on a daily basis from fitting society's beauty standards.
Yeah.
And it's a weird guilt because I can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
Like, this is just how I look. And I happen to have interests that are makeup and fashion.
Yeah.
That is just my passion, would be if I could see or not. And all of those things lead me to passing or fitting certain standards. And there are times in which I do benefit from that. And equally, there are times in which it harms me. I remember one of my comments once was that I have pretty privilege in reverse, right? Like this idea that being pretty gets you further in life and gets you benefits. But they were like, you being pretty means people never think you're disabled. So they don't offer you the accommodations you need. They never think you're disabled. So they don't help you when you ask for it. They don't think you're... And I was like, whoa, that's such a weird thing that like I actually benefit from pretty privilege and have pretty privilege in reverse in different moments of my life. I have had major brands like Fortune 500 household names that everybody would know of say, if we stick you on a billboard, nobody will know you're a minority.
Oh my gosh.
Because I don't look disabled.
Yeah.
But equally, I've had times where I've booked the commercial because it's a beauty campaign.
Yeah.
And I fit the beauty standard while still getting disability points.
Yeah.
So it's like this weird catch-22.
Yeah.
Where there's moments it works for me and there's moments it works against me. And I have no control over that. Like this just is how I look. And I don't know, it carries like a lot of complex emotions for me.
Yeah. It's so complex. And it's that thing too of to society, to people that we're often in professional spaces with, like our disabilities to them are palatable.
Yes.
Which is so gross. And it is such a privileged position to be in. But as you say, it's also very complex because we're less likely to advocate for what we need.
And we're less likely to be believed.
Yeah.
Yes. My parents used to always say, it was so hard that I made things look so easy because then nobody believed how hard it really was for me.
Yeah.
They knew because they were my parents who saw every day in and day out, all the time, how hard I was working to make it look so easy. But they were like, you make it look so effortless that people don't understand how draining that is, how exhausting it is, how hard it actually is for you every day. And so they don't give you the accommodations you need. They don't offer you the help. And like the biggest example of this I can think of off the top of my head was when I was in grade 8 and I was actively going blind. I had a guide dog. I read Braille. Like I was actively in the midst of my traumatic vision loss. And there was a blind student who was fully blind from birth, and he was a grade older than me. And we were in like a gym class, and I went to a private school at the time, and they had a rock climbing wall in the gym. And it was just me and him in the room, and I can't remember why. But they were like, Molly, can you grab the rope for him? Help him. He's struggling. He can't see it. And I was like, I can't see it. I can't see it. Like, I don't know what I'm doing that's making you not think that he and I are the same. But we are the same. Like, yes, I have some light and shadow remaining, but that's not usable and functional in this moment. And it was just like such a disheartening thing to experience so early on in my new identity as a blind woman.
Yeah. So much to unpack.
So you mentioned making space, and there's a big chunk of your journey between coming home and beginning to rebuild to being in LA, Forbes 30 under 30, making space, thriving. What was that? Take me from A to Z. How did this transition happen?
Oh man, it's very messy. Very messy.
It always is. It's never as glamorous as it looks to the outside.
Absolutely not. And not linear in any way, shape, or form. But essentially, I was ready for a fresh start. London brought a lot of bad memories, and I just couldn't be there anymore. I needed to get away. And I also hadn't traveled in such a long time. And I remember speaking to my doctors and being like, I'm going to travel. I want to get away for a little bit. And they were like, no, absolutely no. Like, disability doesn't take a vacation. Like, you can't, don't do that.
Disability doesn't take a vacation, but disabled people can.
Yes.
Damn. Oh my, okay, sorry, I'm going to step back. The ableism in the medical field
so bad
drives me insane. Like, I know that I have a lot of doctors and nurses who follow me. You're the real ones. Like, thank you. Thank you for listening to disabled voices. The way that there needs to be in medical school, like an entire goddamn course about disability rights, disability justice, disability culture, the disability rights, like we need them to learn about ableism, about language. Like it's so important because for so many disabled people and their families, medical is the first touch point. And then they instill this in our families and in ourselves. And it just frustrates me to no end. Like the way I would love to start keynoting at medical conferences and at like medical schools more, because Lord knows they need it.
Yes.
Call me.
Oh my gosh, yes. Absolutely. Please call Molly. Please. Because even, and I'm sure you get this more than I do, I get so many comments on like DMs on social media from healthcare professionals being like, wow, I can't believe you can do this. It's like, what? You guys need to be the ones that believe it so then we can believe that we can do it.
Exactly. You're the ones that should tell me I can do it.
Yes.
Okay, so you're being told you're disabled, so you can't go on vacation.
Yep. So I was essentially told don't travel, but did it anyway. And I remember getting on a plane. I chose LA because I wanted to find some way back into the creative industry that I loved. And LA had sunshine, it had, it was far enough away that it felt like I was truly getting away, and it had the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I planned a week's trip. I planned some kind of meetings and networking opportunities for while I was there because I knew no one here. And when I got here, I was terrified. I was constantly looking at how close I was to the nearest hospital. Like, that was something I have done and still do, depending on where I'm going, for years. Like, I always need to know how far away I am from a hospital. So I did that when I came to LA, and I just loved it. I don't know if you've ever had this feeling, maybe you have with LA. Like, I remember landing on the tarmac and looking out the airplane window and being like, yeah, this is my new home.
Literally, that's how I felt when I came to LA. I mean, I told my parents at 5 years old I was going to move to LA and be an actress. I also was like a musical theater kid and wanted to work in the industry my whole life. And I remember the first time I landed, and I didn't live here for like many years. I think I didn't move here till 5 years later. But the first time I landed, I was like, this is my home.
Yeah.
And I completely resonate with the way you speak about London, because that's how I feel about Toronto.
Yeah.
I love Toronto. It's an undeniably incredible city. I would recommend anybody visit.
Yeah.
And I love visiting, but I cannot live there.
Yeah.
Because so much of my trauma happened there. And when I go back, I can't just see the positives.
Yeah.
Like, the hardship and the pain and the suffering is equally there. And even if I can momentarily separate, I cannot forever.
Yeah.
And like, if I went and lived there, it's just like, I feel like I'm taken back to the person I was when I was there.
Yeah.
And I don't like that.
I relate so hard.
So I totally feel you on that. And like, coming to LA and just feeling like I am whoever I want to be here.
Yes.
Like, I am not my story. I am not my past. I am not the headlines that people have read. I am who I am going to be from now on.
Yes.
This is the fresh start.
Yeah.
And it's like the best thing. And no matter what, like, I know I probably won't live in LA for the rest of my life. I don't know where I'll live. I'm one of those people, like, I want to travel the world and like live in many places. But LA will always be home because it will always be where I found myself and where I became who I wanted to be. And I'm sure you hear this all the time too, because LA is a city, you love it or you hate it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are LA grumps and they hate LA and they want to complain about LA all day long. And like, I acknowledge the pitfalls of LA, but I have lived here for almost a decade, I think 9 years now. And I am still as obsessed with LA as the day I landed. I love this city with my whole heart. The rose-tinted glasses have never disappeared from me.
Same. I'm exactly the same. Exactly the same. And the idea for me when I got here of like no one asking me what happened. Like, are you better? Oh, that question. Are you better? Are you better now? Like, what happened? No baggage.
You're never gonna be better.
Nope. Never gonna be better. And as you say, that opportunity to reinvent and to be in a city with so many people who have big dreams and have big goals. And it just, there is something about it, like that energy of LA is so special.
The things I always say I love the most about LA is like the dreamer energy around you. Like, everybody came here chasing a dream they were told wasn't a real job.
Yes.
And they said, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyways.
Yep. I
I don't need to follow the blueprint for life. I'm going to go off course. And I am going, even if it means that I have to like share a 1-bedroom with 3 friends and like struggle for a few, like, they believe in it enough to follow that dream. And like, that energy inspires me. And I don't know if you feel this way, but like, the other thing I love as somebody who, no matter how much I try to fit in, I just never will. I love being in a city of creative weirdos who don't care to fit in. And that's what makes them special. And that's what makes them who they are. And that's why they succeed.
Yeah.
Because they own being weird and different and don't try to conform. And that is beautiful.
Absolutely.
And it makes me feel like I can just stop attempting to fit in and lean into my uniqueness as my strength and be accepted for it instead of belittled or isolated for it, the way I've always felt.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm often asked, like, oh, what's the biggest difference between UK and US? And specifically LA. I remember in the UK, in London specifically, I would share my big goals and my big dreams and everything I wanted to do and achieve. And I would be told, oh, like, go sit down. Like, don't dream so big. Like, that's ridiculous. Stop having so much of an ego. Go be quiet and go stand in the corner. But you tell people in LA your big hopes, your dreams, your goals, and they're like, yes, like, I'm rooting for you. That's amazing. You got this. Even if they don't mean it, I don't care.
Or they'll be like, you know what? I have a friend. Let me introduce you to
Yes.
them. And like, I don't know. My version of that was when I had like all my fun hair transformations and I had bright pink hair. And I was at this party in LA and there was like 3 or 4 of us with pink hair. And we were all talking about like, oh, what dye do you use? What shampoo do you use to keep it vivid? Like we were talking about our like pink hair routines. And then literally like a week or 2 later, I went home to Toronto and I went to a friend's birthday. And this guy who was dating my friend looked at me and he goes, why did you do that to yourself?
Oh my God.
What? And I looked at him and I said, because it's hair, I can change it whenever I want, and because it's not for you.
Yep.
And like that difference, or I had this jacket, it was this metallic pink jacket that I loved so much. I literally like wore it in a Samsung commercial for the Oscars. Like they styled me in
Nice.
my own jacket.
Cute.
And I bought that jacket in Toronto. I moved here right after. And I went home and I was wearing that jacket and my friend said to me, you're the only person I know who would wear that.
Oh my God.
And she didn't like mean it in an insult, but it's definitely one of those like backhanded compliments
Yeah.
where like even if you say it kindly, there's a bit of an undertone. And that jacket, if I would wear that in LA, quite literally every block I'd walk down, somebody would stop me and ask where I got it.
Absolutely. Yep.
And then I met somebody else who had the same jacket. And I was like, and it was those moments in my early years here where I was like, these are my people.
Yeah.
Like, this just is my place. These are the people I want to be around.
Yes. And even if you have terrible living experiences, you mentioned, if you like have to live with 3 other people, like I remember when I first came here, I was living in this really horrific Airbnb. Oh God, it was bad. It was really awful. I honestly don't know how I made it through, but I remember still, even after all these terrible experiences, looking out the window and being like, wow, I live here.
Mm-hmm.
That makes you, it's like that's what makes you stay. Like,
there's something about living in a city with palm trees when you grow up somewhere with snow
yes.
that like signals permanent vacation.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter how hard I work and how stressed I am and how exhausted I am. Somehow knowing that there's palm trees outside, I'm like, but it's kind of like vacay.
It's so true. And for me, to be honest, the heat, the sun, it's really good for my health.
Okay, for me as a blind person, it's really great for my mobility because there's nothing more annoying than having 4 seasons when every season impacts your ability to be independent and navigate safely.
Yeah.
Like dealing with piles of snow and ice when you're blind.
Yeah.
Not ideal. Dealing with a bunch of leaves and sticks in your way with your cane or your guide dog in the fall. Like all of these things make I remember every season having to kind of like adapt my routes.
Yeah.
My walking routes. And now it's like, nope, never again.
No. Seamless.
Predictable. It's predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, I love finding other people that love LA as much as
I
me.
know. Same. I get really awkward if I'm in a conversation with someone and they're like, oh, this city. And I'm like, I love it here.
You're like, I think it's great. I mean, the worst part for both of us is 2 ladies who can't drive. Is the
so true.
transport.
I've hardly met anyone else who cannot drive. I feel like you're the only one. That's tough.
Yeah, the not driving, definitely a downfall because it is like a driver's city. But I will suck that up any day.
Same.
For all the benefits that I
same.
see.
Definitely.
Okay, so you're at this point where you're like needing something fresh. You come to LA for a little week-long getaway against doctor's orders. You rebel.
I know.
And what stemmed from that?
I ended up meeting a bunch of other creatives, and it just felt like the fresh start that I needed. And I remember actually being a little bit sick while I was here. Not sick that I needed to go to the hospital sick, but just, again, that thing of like, I don't feel good but I love it here. And that was a big sign to me, because if I was feeling that unwell in the UK, like I would be in deep depression. Like I would be really struggling with my mental health, and my mental health was much, much better out here even for that week. So I ended up staying an additional 2 weeks. So I was here for 3 weeks in total, which was also terrifying because I only took a week's worth of medical supplies with me. But somehow made it work.
The world to traveling with a disability when you're new to it, you know nothing. I have learned after years of traveling with a guide dog to pack like at least 1 to 2 days of extra food in case like a flight gets canceled or anything. But early on in those first years, definitely was not doing that.
Yes.
You learn over the years to over prepare instead of under prepare.
Absolutely. And now I overpack every single time. Yes. And when I went home after those 3 weeks, I remember having the conversation with my mom, being like, I am going to try and get my visa and I'm going to move. And she was like, I know. I knew it. I knew it the moment that you called me when you landed in LA. I just knew it. And we had like that cry together. Because also I feel like as someone who had been through so much and missed so many of those like pivotal years in your life, and as I say, I was really close with my mom, like we didn't get a lot of time together unless it was like in the hospital or it was like very traumatic. And there was a lot of guilt, like the guilt of as soon as I am better, quote unquote better, like never better, but as soon as I'm well enough to be outside of a hospital, I now move countries and be away from my mom and my parents and my family. Like a lot of guilt.
And also I think for a lot of people who grow up with a disability or a chronic illness, when somebody like your mother has been your rock, there's also like a certain level of codependency there that's just inevitable.
Yeah.
Like it's just inevitable that will happen when that's been your person, ride or die, fighting for you and supporting you and helping you and maybe showering you when you physically couldn't shower yourself.
Yeah.
Or, you know, being the person who's advocating for you when you're too weak to do so for yourself. And all of a sudden, when you have to separate from that person who's been the one there doing everything with you, ride or die, that's also a new challenge to navigate.
Yeah.
But it's an important one.
It is. It definitely felt like a huge, everything you said. That was, I think, the scariest part. And it took me about a year to get my visa. That was not an easy process. I did not qualify for the visa that I thought I was going to be able to get. It was a challenge. It was a lot of work.
Currently renewing mine. Fingers crossed I get approved, everyone.
You got this. You got this. You've done so much for this country. How can they not?
Thank you. I've paid enough taxes in California, I'll tell you that much.
Oh, God. The sun tax. And eventually got my visa, moved into this very dodgy Airbnb, and just started trying to make it work. And I had a lot of bad experiences with trying to find work, and then turned this kind of hobby of mine, like helping friends get jobs, into what then turned into See Talent, which was my first business.
Crazy that your first business ended up getting acquired. If you're not like an entrepreneur business girly, you might not realize what a big deal that is or what that even necessarily means. But like for many entrepreneurs, like the dream is being able to get acquired. Like that is not an easy thing to do with any business, let alone your first business in a new country as a young disabled woman. Incredible. So tell us about what See Talent was.
So See Talent, and named See Talent because as disabled people, we usually don't get access to option A or option B, and we have to create our own option C. And that was what See Talent was for me. It was my option C.
Oh, I love that origin story of the name. I always thought it because we don't see ourselves.
Well, that too.
So it's a good double entendre.
Yes.
It's like a good double meaning. Love that.
And it was a talent agency that represented disabled artists, athletes, creatives. And it stemmed out of obviously not seeing enough representation of disabled people in film and TV, and also disabled people in the industry being treated really poorly and being constantly only ever pitched for disabled specific roles, or being in those stereotypical like villain, victim, inspiration stereotypical positions.
Yes.
And also just not having good representation of agents or managers who would understand the needs of a disabled performer
and be able to properly advocate for those things.
Absolutely. So that was really what we were and what we did. And I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I not had a day in business school, barely finished high school, like zero qualifications to be doing what I was doing. But a lot of passion, a lot of great mentors and people along the way. And somehow it grew really quickly. We placed disabled artists in thousands of roles, from Avatar to The Last of Us to The Hunger Games to countless brand deals, and helped disabled people make millions in revenue for their own businesses, it was a dream. It was an absolute dream. And when we were approached to be acquired, I honestly had to Google what that meant. I had no clue.
The amount of faking it till you make it is inspiring.
You just figure it out. You just YouTube it. You just Google it.
Girl, I am so the same. Like, I didn't go to college. I just graduated high school and got straight to work. And when I was building my business, I would just watch bootlegged episodes of Shark Tank on YouTube and Google what does equity mean? I had no idea what I was doing when I started my business.
Being disabled really does set you up for success, though. The constant need to adapt and be flexible.
And innovate.
Mm-hmm. It sets you up well for running a business. And to be honest, so many of us have no other choice. I couldn't find employment.
Yeah.
As a disabled person, I literally had to start my own business.
Truly, so many of us become entrepreneurs out of necessity, not out of want.
Yeah.
But the lived experience of disability makes you perfect to be an entrepreneur. Even the fact that we're so used to having to advocate for ourselves makes us very good for communicating and negotiating.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was Seat Talent. We were acquired, and I didn't know if it was the right decision for us. The goal was to change the way the world views and defines disability. It was to get disabled people on the biggest stages and the biggest platforms in the world, and it seemed like that was the right decision to make. It was mainstreaming. It was doing what hadn't been done. So yeah, we did it, and it was awesome.
And at the end of the day, step one is getting our own table at an event, but step two is getting to be at everybody else's table at that event, right? So it's step one was making a talent agency exclusively just for disabled people, but step two was moving that into just being a part of a larger general talent agency.
Absolutely.
Where we're a part of you, we're not separate from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what did you do after your baby got acquired and it was time to move to the next thing?
I took 0 breaks and I moved right along. And I would get countless emails from disabled people who wanted to work behind the camera, who wanted to work also in different industries. And I always went back to my first experiences of trying to get employment, and then was learning about the stats of disabled people being twice more likely to be unemployed than non-disabled people, twice more likely to live in poverty, despite having such a massive annual disposable income, and companies being able to achieve double the revenue and 30% higher profit margins, and all of these wild stats around how much better a business would be if they employed disabled people. So that was kind of the foundation for making space, and the goal then became a bit wider of let's figure out how we close the disability employment gap.
So you started making space, and I feel like from that first inkling of an idea that you had to where it is today has morphed and grown as businesses do. What does making space do today?
Oh yeah, it's evolved a lot and constantly will. So today it is a free tech platform. So anyone who is disabled can sign up to Making Space, and on the platform they'll be able to access hours of free education. So that's technical upskilling, that's self-advocacy, that's soft skills. It's employer-endorsed skills with employers that we work with, like Netflix. And it's also access to over, I think it's been like 4,000 job opportunities that we've hosted on the platform from employers that we partner with. So when you go on Making Space, you know that those employers are paying to get access to the disabled community. And there are also employers that have used our platform to improve their their workplaces. So they're going to be hopefully more accessible, more inclusive, and much more ready to enable a disabled person to thrive within their workspace. And on the platform, disabled people can also leverage a tool that we built to help disabled people transform their lived experiences of disability into transferable skills and explain them in a way that hiring managers can understand. Like, having a disability, having a chronic illness, I manage complex medical supplies, I manage a medical team, and because of that, I have project management skills and all of these other skills that I just sometimes need help with putting in a way that would make sense to an employer.
I love that. If you are in my audience and you are listening to this podcast right now on Spotify or here on YouTube, please go check out Making Space. This is a resource that you should be using. And I can tell you, as somebody who's known Keely for many years now, she walks the walk, she talks the talk. She is who she presents herself to be. We actually met because I got the Forbes 30 Under 30 the year after you did. And even though you're 2 years younger than me, I joke that you're like my big sister because you reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I saw you got this. There's not a lot of disabled listers. I'd love to help you if you ever need help navigating the system with a disability. And that just speaks exactly to who you are. Everything you do is about supporting the community and uplifting the community. And I don't know if you feel this way. I certainly feel like I am exactly who I was meant to be. And even though in many moments I didn't understand why this happened to me, and there are still times when I'm like, oh, did it have to be me though? I know that this is exactly who I was meant to be. And I think you are an example of that as well. The fact that you have taken your lived experience and have turned it into something that isn't just about helping yourself, but about helping the community at large is so beautiful. And we are lucky to have somebody like you in our community.
Oh, you're going to make me cry. And I feel so grateful and so lucky to call you a friend. Like, you are someone that I have looked up to for many, many years. And having disabled role models is so important. So, so important. So thank you for saying that.
Well, thank you. What's next for Keely Cat-Wells?
Oh, it's a good question. We are currently building something that I really hope will be so helpful and beneficial for the community. So one of the biggest issues that we know within the community is benefits, public benefits, the navigating that maze of a system, the hideous policies and laws that still exist, and the asset and income caps that are still legal in this country. So Making Space is building a benefits navigator to help disabled people better understand what they're eligible for, help them eventually, if they want to, transition off it and into competitive integrated employment. And that is something and a project that I'm really passionate, really excited about right now. And we're also continuously running our fellowship program that is like, I guess, a pet project for me. Like, it's something at Making Space that we care so deeply about. It's our opportunity to not just think about scale and the amount of disabled people that we can reach and support through the platform, but it's that opportunity to support folks one-on-one, direct mentorship opportunities to connect them to employers, jobs, funding. So continuously growing and evolving that.
You've already done such incredible things in 30 years of life. I know there's so many ways in which your work will continue to have ripple effects and deeply impact our community. And I'm just excited to see what comes of it, because you truly, I feel like, have just scratched the surface of what you're going to do.
Thank you.
And now it's time to ask the awkward question.
Oh, no.
This is a question that people will want to know, but they feel like maybe they shouldn't ask. And I think this is where we make real change. So there is a lot of misconceptions and a lot of shame around the idea of having an ostomy or an ileostomy. Can you walk us through how it actually works and how you actually live, care for it, and function with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I use like a prosthetic bag, like an ostomy bag. I have to clean my ostomy, so it's essentially like a part of my intestine comes out of my stomach, and that is like it's a diversion of waste. So I have this bag stuck to my stomach 24/7. I mean, only take it off to clean it, maybe shower, but you can also shower with the bag. And it's the intestine itself doesn't have any nerves, so you can't feel it. It doesn't hurt. Only the skin around it can get sore, and that can sometimes hurt. But I think there's a misconception that it's super painful. It's not. And yeah, I change my bag. Everyone is slightly different, but I change mine every day. And it's, as I said earlier, it's kind of like brushing my teeth now. Like it's become routine. There are complications along the way, but it's just an easy, simple part of my life. And honestly, it's like the least complicated part of my disability, I think, now.
Which is not at all, I'm sure, what like a lot of people at face value would think.
Yeah.
This is going to be a stupid question. I obviously can't like Google image what it looks like. And I follow lots of people who post like bikini photos with their ostomy bag, but I can't see it.
Yeah.
So is there like a plastic hole or like a prosthetic that they put in, or is it literally just like a small opening and you tape the bag around it?
Oh yeah, it's a great question. So you can choose to either cut your own bags, or sometimes you can have, like, whoever you're ordering your pouches from, they can cut them for you. I choose to cut my own because your ostomy can also change, like the stoma can actually change in shape depending on like weight and environment. And mine, like, for some reason decides to shrink constantly. Anyway, so I cut a hole in my pouches. And yeah, it's like plastic wafer, and it's super sticky, and then it just sticks to your stomach. And I was terrified when I started using ostomy pouches that they were just going to fall off. Like, terrified. But they don't. They stick.
You've never had an ostomy accident?
No. No. Oh, absolutely. Had many, many accidents. Like, leaking is a thing. Like, yes, many accidents, but you get better with it. But they won't just randomly fall off, which is what I was scared about at the beginning.
And this is, again, a weird question. Can you feel? Like, I can feel when I poop. Can you, I know like it doesn't have nerves, but can you feel when you're like, oh, I think some movement happened? Or like,
no, I mean, you can feel when the pouch like gets full, but it's very different to normal like poop. Like, it's kind of like watery. Like, it's like liquid.
Fascinating. So it's not like, oh, you can have constipation or diarrhea still. It's just, it's its own thing.
And you can have your version of that. Like, there is a thing, like, you can get a blockage, which is kind of dangerous, which means, like, if you've had, like, I don't know, a grain or a piece of corn that you shouldn't have, like, you're not really allowed popcorn or, like, peas or anything that can get, like, stuck. And that can cause some issues. And depending on what you eat, like, it can change in consistency, but for the most part, people with ileostomies, it's watery and, like, liquid.
So your diet does have to change after.
It does. It does. For the most part, you can pretty much eat everything. I will say I schedule the best I can, like when I'm going to eat and what I'm going to eat, depending on what I'm doing. Like if I'm doing a keynote, I'm not going to go have a meal before. I'm going to wait until after. Yeah.
That must be difficult because you still have a stomach. You still feel hunger.
Yes.
So like even if you're hungry, you'll make sure you don't eat.
Right. Yeah. I will be kind of meticulous about that. And like some ostomates don't really mind, and like I at the beginning wouldn't wear tight clothing. I would wear big jumpers and like baggy, loose outfits. But now I don't. Now I'm like, I wear super tight clothes. Like no one can really see it, but that makes me a little bit more conscious of what and when I'm going to eat.
That makes sense. How big is the hole? Like, is it really small?
So I would say my stoma comes out of my stomach like, wait, how big's an inch?
Like
Maybe like
that?
Yeah, like that much.
Okay.
Yeah, like that much.
I pictured it being like that.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit smaller. Yeah, like that.
You know, you learn something new every day, and that's why we have these conversations. Because I think it's so much more important to ask and know the truth than to assume and be wrong.
Absolutely. And
so much more harm is in that.
Yes. And everyone's experience is slightly different, even with the same condition.
Of course.
Like my stoma is going to be very different to how someone else's stoma works and looks. And I will say, like, I am still dealing with a lot of internalized ableism, a lot of shame, a lot of, like, it's still really scary for me to talk about it. And I don't very often. It's taken, like, it's a journey getting comfortable with it.
Well, I appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable. I think the reality is everybody poops. I'm very pro poop talk. That's another thing people wouldn't know about me if you follow me online. I'm very pro talking about poop with people, very pro talking about periods.
I can't wait for Molly's new series on
poop talk. Hashtag everybody poops, come to my seminar. Like I am so just like bodily functions are bodily functions. And everybody has bodily functions in slightly different ways. No two people experience their period the same.
Yeah.
No two people have the same, digestive system that exits the same as each other. But we all have to do those things.
Yeah.
In one way or another, they're things that we experience. And so it's like, why create guilt and shame and embarrassment around the most natural human functions that we need to survive and that, frankly, we're lucky to experience.
Yeah.
Because it means our bodies are doing what they need to do to keep ticking.
Absolutely. And especially as women whose bodies have not been studied, who have not been listened to by doctors. Like the more that we chat about it between ourselves, the more we learn about ourselves and realize also what's healthy and what's not.
Oh my God, the amount that I was told that putting an IUD in would not be painful, and it was the most painful thing I ever experienced, and then only for years later to get on TikTok and see so many people talking about how that was the most painful experience of their life. And I was like, we need to talk amongst ourselves because the medical world is gaslighting us, is not believing us, and is not studying us. So we need to be the ones to unfortunately push.
Yeah.
And sharing and coming together is how we do that. Because if I remained thinking I was the only person who had pain during that procedure and it was just a me problem, then I wouldn't realize how messed up gynecological treatment is of women, and I wouldn't care to speak about it.
Yeah.
But once you realize, oh, it wasn't just me, this is a massive problem that people are facing, more voices talking about it creates more traction and more change.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we started this off by asking, who is Keely Cat-Wells? And now I want to end it by asking, what is it really like to be you?
Oh, it's exhausting.
Preach.
It's so tiring. Founder life with a disability is, oh my gosh, it's so exhausting. But the highs are worth every minute. The highs are so high. And what a privilege and a joy it is to have a purpose and to be able to work on that purpose with people that you love deeply and you admire. And I constantly remind myself and think about people like Judy Heumann and like Kitty Cohn and like those incredible advocates who have come before us, who had to put their bodies on the line, who endured arrests, who just did the most unbelievable things so we have the rights that we do today. So I'm just so grateful that I get my little corner of the world to work on something that I deeply care about with people that I love. And yeah, it's freaking exhausting, but it's fun.
Copy paste. I feel every aspect of that answer deeply to my core. You have no idea. That is everything I'm feeling in this very moment. And again, that's why it's so important to have friends doing the same work that you do, because I think advocacy is exhausting because as much as it is what pays our bills, it's not a job.
No.
Which means we're never going to retire. It's never done because it's not about us checking in and out for a paycheck. It's about us day in and day out tirelessly doing this so that one day somebody will hopefully say, I have the rights I have because of Keely Cat-Wells. I have the rights I have because of Molly Burke. The same way we pay our respects to those who came before us in this space. But it's exhausting work.
Yeah.
But I would rather be stressed and exhausted doing something I love than stressed and exhausted doing something I hate.
Yep.
So either way, we are still blessed. And certainly as disabled women, we are very privileged to be in the position we are. And I think knowing that we have that privilege actually carries its own weight and its own pressure. Because when you know how fortunate and lucky you are, and you're like, I don't know how I ended up getting to be the one, but I am. So now I better work my ass off and make this privilege worth it. Like, do something with this privilege.
Yeah.
And that puts this level of pressure on you that makes it really hard to say no or to sit down or to take a break. But I know that it is all worth it.
Yeah, it is. You said that so well.
Thank you for being here with me and for sharing your story with all of us. Where can people keep up with you?
Oh, thank you. Well, first and foremost, sign up to Making Space. It is completely free. It is and always will be for disabled people. It's making-space. I think in America you say dash. Do you say dash or hyphen in America? Dash.
Either works. Well, I don't know. I grew up with Irish parents, so I'm always conflicted as to which is just like the European in me and which is the actual Canadian North American.
So funny. It's so confusing.
It's so confusing.
So making-space.com. And obviously Instagram, just Keely Cat-Wells, and LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my social platform of choice.
You're so active. I was like, damn, how does she do it?
I don't know. I just love me some LinkedIn.
Yeah, you're good. She's definitely worth giving a follow on LinkedIn. I know that you're like, LinkedIn, really? Please go follow her on LinkedIn. You will actually learn so much. Thank you for being here. And thank all of you for listening. Make sure you are following the show over on Spotify and following the channel here on YouTube. It really helps me out. This show is fully self-produced and self-funded. So if you want to support me, ways in which you can do so is purchasing my book, Unseen, How I Lost My Vision But Found My Voice, which is available on Audible, as well as anywhere books are sold in a hardcover or ebook. And you can also pre-order my children's book, which comes out on October 13th. LT Takes the Lead, A Guide Dog's Tale. It's really cute. Even if you don't have kids, it's just like a really cute, sweet disability book. So please support. It would mean the world to me. And thank you for being here. Now you know what it's really like.